You didn't even notice it at first. It felt like comfort. The way she looked at you like you were rare, like you had something no one else did. She remembered your stories, leaned in close when you spoke, laughed at all the right moments. She made you feel like being you was finally enough. And for a while, that was everything. But real comfort doesn't ask you to shrink. And slowly, quietly, something began to shift. She never told you to change. She didn't have to. It was in the pause before her reply, the look that lingered a little too long when you said something she didn't like. The warmth faded, not with a fight, just with silence. Just enough to make you hesitate next time. She never shouted, never made demands. She just made you want to please her more than you wanted to be yourself. That's how it starts. You change your tone. You soften your opinions. You cut off parts of yourself like loose threads, hoping she'll stay close, hoping her smile will return. And when it does, even briefly, you breathe again like you've earned your place back. She becomes your sun, and you become careful, not because you're weak, but because being accepted finally feels possible, because she gives just enough love to keep you chasing it. But the truth? It isn't love if you have to disappear to keep it. There's a kind of woman who doesn't control with fire. She controls with silence, with soft words that come wrapped in expectation, with affection that teaches you to behave. And you, like so many before you, confuse her stillness for safety. You tell yourself you've found someone gentle, someone wise, someone worth changing for. But slowly, you begin to lose your voice. You edit your truth. You tiptoe inside your own life. You trade honesty for peace. And you convince yourself, this is love, this is maturity, this is what it means to grow. But real growth doesn't ask you to vanish. Real love doesn't require you to shrink so someone else can feel bigger. She didn't take your power. You gave it one quiet moment at a time. Not out of weakness, but because no one ever told you love could feel like a cage, even when it's padded in warmth and whispered approval. You didn't fall in love. You fell into performance. And she didn't love you. She loved how you made her feel. Worshipped, admired, safe. Not because you were powerful, but because you were willing to give yours away. She's gone. Not just physically. Emotionally, she left long before you did. And now all that remains is silence. The kind that used to feel peaceful but now presses in like a weight. And in that silence, you wait for the ache to tell you something true. You think it's her you miss, her voice, her softness, her presence woven into your everyday like thread in your favorite shirt. But it isn't her. It's the version of you, she reflected. You miss the man you became in her eyes, the man who felt chosen, wanted, worthy. You miss the sense of meaning that came from being seen by someone who knew exactly when to praise and when to withhold. It wasn't love. It was validation dressed as devotion. Because the more she noticed you, the more real you felt. And the moment she stopped, when her affection dulled, when her gaze turned neutral, you didn't feel abandoned. You felt erased. You look back now and wonder how many pieces of yourself you lost just to keep her gaze warm. You remember the little ways you twisted the opinions you softened, the truths you buried just to stay in her good light. You weren't loving her. You were trying to earn the right to exist in her world. And when she left, she didn't take your heart. She took the mirror, the one that showed you the version of yourself you thought was finally enough. And now that it's gone, you're left facing the you that existed before her. The one with sharper edges, the one with louder dreams, the one you began to hide the moment her smile became your measure of worth. It's disorienting to stand in the middle of your life and realize you don't know who you are without her reflection. You wonder, did she ever really love me? Or did she just love the parts of me that made her feel powerful? And then the harder question, did I ever really love her? Or did I just love the way she made me feel needed? You search your memories for answers, but they blur. Because performance, when done long enough, starts to feel like truth. You weren't yourself with her. You were her audience, her support system, her source of significance. And now, stripped of that role, you feel hollow not because of what you lost, but because of how much you gave up. She didn't steal your identity. You gave it away little by little in exchange for being kept. And now that she's gone, all you're left with is this: a voice you barely recognize, a face that doesn't quite match the man you thought you were, and a truth that's harder than heartbreak. You didn't lose love. You lost your reflection. And the only way to heal now is to stop chasing mirrors and start looking for your own eyes again. It wasn't dramatic. You didn't wake up one day and decide to betray yourself. It happened slowly, quietly, like steam slipping from a cup. At first, it looked like compromise. You told yourself relationships require sacrifice. So you gave a little, then a little more. You thought you were being generous. You thought this was maturity. But deep down, part of you knew what you were giving away wasn't habits. It was yourself. The way you used to speak with fire dimmed. The way you laughed without apology softened. The way you challenged what felt wrong silenced. Not because she asked, because she didn't have to. She didn't punish you with anger. She punished you with absence. A delayed reply, a changed tone, a glance that said, "You're not being who I need you to be." And you responded like you always did, by adjusting. You made yourself more agreeable, less inconvenient, easier to love. And for a while it worked. She stayed close. She praised the new you. She said you were finally growing. But in the quiet moments, the ones between performance and exhaustion, you started to feel it. That ache in your chest that didn't come from heartbreak. It came from erasure. You were still there, sort of. Still working, still showing up, still loving her the best way you knew how. But the man in the mirror? He was fading, becoming more polite, more useful, less alive. And you started to wonder, is love supposed to feel like this? Like maintenance, like monitoring, like managing yourself every hour just to stay desirable? You kept going, because by then, the lie had become familiar. You told yourself this is what it takes to keep love, that men who speak too loudly lose good women, that being bold is selfish, that being soft is strength. But here's the part no one tells you. You can become so easy to love that you forget how to be real. And when she finally left or stopped loving you in the way she used to, you weren't angry. You were empty. Because love didn't leave you. You left you. And now that she's gone, what remains isn't just heartbreak. It's the quiet horror of looking at your own reflection and realizing you've been a stranger for a very long time. Not all harm arrives with a warning. Sometimes it shows up in soft hands and careful words. Sometimes it wears a smile. She never raised her voice. She didn't make demands. She wasn't cruel. She just made you feel safe. Safe enough to stay. Safe enough to open up. Safe enough to begin handing her your edges, sharp, vibrant, real, until you were soft enough to keep. And she loved you more when you were soft. Not emotionally open, just manageable. Not raw, just compliant. Not you, just convenient. You confused it with love. Because the world had already taught you that love should be earned. That if someone stays, you must be doing something right. That comfort is always a sign you've arrived in something true. But this wasn't comfort. It was sedation. A quiet dulling of your instincts. A slow numbing of your voice. A subtle, daily invitation to become less complex so she could love you more easily. She never said, "Don't be that version of you." She just responded colder when you were. And so you learned without even noticing that peace meant pretending, that her affection came in waves, and if you wanted it steady, you had to stop disturbing the water. And you did. You silenced your doubts. You softened your passions. You stopped asking questions that made her withdraw. You didn't lose yourself all at once. You slipped, gently, into disappearance like a man lying in warm water, too numb to notice the heat rising. That's how these kinds of lies work. They don't wound you outright. They lull you. They praise your obedience. They reward your disappearance. They offer you just enough tenderness to keep you loyal to the dream. The dream that this must be love because it doesn't hurt the way pain usually does. But numbness is still suffering. It just whispers instead of screams. And one day, you woke up not angry, not even heartbroken, just gone. You couldn't remember the last time you laughed without checking her reaction. You couldn't remember the last time you moved without calculating the cost. And maybe the scariest part, you didn't even blame her, because she didn't do this to you. You did it to yourself for the sake of a connection that only existed when you didn't. And that's the lie. That disappearing is noble. That shrinking is romantic. That silence is love. But now, with nothing left to trade, you're left with the truth. She didn't need to control you. She only needed you to feel safer, muted, than you ever did loud. And you believed that. Until now. She never told you to stop being yourself. She just stopped loving you when you were. Not overtly, not with cruel words or accusations, but with subtle shifts, a delayed response, a colder embrace, a familiar warmth replaced by something distant and unreadable. She knew how to make her silence louder than any scream, and you heard it every time. Every time you spoke your mind, and she didn't smile. Every time you brought up something that made her uncomfortable, and she grew quiet. Every time you were too much, too passionate, too emotional, too alive, and her affection vanished like it had never been there. She didn't punish you by fighting. She punished you by withdrawing. And slowly, you learned. You learned how to mute yourself, how to edit your truth, how to become the version of you that kept her love closest. Because that's what it felt like, love. Slipping through your fingers every time you stepped out of line. She didn't control you with commands. She controlled you with approval and the quiet, chilling fear of losing it. And you began to obey. Not out of fear of her anger, but fear of her absence. Not because she demanded obedience, but because she trained you to believe that her love was fragile and your truth might break it. So you tiptoed. You flinched at your own opinions. You softened your voice. You weighed every sentence before it left your mouth. You weren't growing. You were erasing. And she rewarded that with affection, but only just enough to keep you trying. That's the most dangerous kind of manipulation, the one you never name, because it never looks like abuse. It looks like care. It looks like tenderness. It looks like, I just need a little more from you. And you gave more, until there was barely anything left to give. You were praised for being easy, for being supportive, for being calm. But inside, you were tensa. You were cautious. You were dying by degrees. And still, you told yourself, she's not cruel. She's just sensitive. She's been hurt before I can be patient. But patience isn't supposed to cost your personhood. And love, real love, doesn't ask you to disappear. Because if being loved means being small, then it was never love. It was possession. Soft, sweet, subtle, but possession, all the same,